everyone. I am super excited for today's guest. We have Michael here. Michael is real well known in the Kansas City entrepreneur, small business, innovation space. And so, Michael, if you could just real quick introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Carmona. I'm the Community Relations and Impact Manager over here at the UMKC Innovation Center.
Awesome. And Michael, what kind of work are you doing over at UMKC?
Yeah, so here at the Innovation Center, we have several pillars that are focused on entrepreneurship support and also professional development support. But the two programs that I help support here are under our regional ecosystem building pillar. So those two programs are KCSourceLink and Missouri SourceLink, which at the core of our programming is really to help build the ecosystem, but really to help connect entrepreneurs who are seeking support to start and grow businesses in the KC region and across the state of Missouri to the organizations and people to help them out.
It's awesome. And it's actually how I found you. You have spoken at a couple of different networking things I've been to, but I also, KCSourceLink has a strong hand in, of course, Global Entrepreneurship Week here in Kansas City, as well as just having events all the time for small businesses and entrepreneurs in this space. So we love y'all. I'm super excited to talk about why this work is so important and what hole or gap y'all are trying to fill here in the Kansas City area and across the state, because if I remember correctly, it started here in Kansas City and then it expanded up to the state level, right?
Yes. Okay. So I can tell you just a brief history of KCSourceLink. So the organization was started in 2003. Maria Myers, who's the executive director of our innovation center, was tasked with helping to build a program or an initiative to help folks who at the time were wanting to start and grow businesses to get connected to the resources. Obviously, we didn't have as many resources back then as we do today, but it was still a challenge for many people who were wanting to get into the entrepreneurship space or grow their ventures to find the services that were already existing at the time. So the core, as I mentioned, of our organization is to connect entrepreneurs to the right resources at the right time. Now, what's really fascinating about that is that the model, how it was built, was done in a way where that connections and the other work that we do, which I'll share a little bit more later, could be scaled into other communities. So we do have a national team, SourceLink, that is actually working in more than 80 communities across the United States and Puerto Rico to help build these entrepreneurial ecosystems, with the core, again, really being focused on helping connect people who want to start and grow businesses to those support services.
That's awesome. And tell me a little bit about the kinds of people and entrepreneurs and businesses that are coming in for support.
Yeah, well, I would say, we're very fortunate to have a really strong team, and a lot of our work is really to gain a better understanding of who's in the network, what services are provided, events, as you mentioned, other opportunities such as funding, pitch competitions, and the like. But I would say that we are able to serve any type of entrepreneur at any stage and any sector. So that is one of the things that really, I'd say, holds us apart from a lot of other groups here across the nation. But really the idea is that anybody, regardless of their knowledge of entrepreneurship, where they're at in starting or growing their business, can get connected to at least one group or person that's going to help them take on those next steps that they're aiming for. But I would say that the one commonality that we do find in the entrepreneurs or the individuals that are coming to us is that there's a desire to move forward with a dream or an idea, and they just don't have all of the pieces in place. And really for us, it's really through those connections of people and resources to help them get what they need in order to move forward in that next step.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you guys have, I mean, I know I have gone to the website and done the little connection survey piece, and you guys send out robust, like, here are the people and places you can go and speak to depending on what your goals are, right? So you have people for, resources for marketing, you have resources for scaling, you mentioned funding. I mean, you guys cover pretty much the life cycle of what entrepreneurs need when they're launching, growing, scaling their businesses.
And even when they're looking to leave their business, right? Because that's
Right.
something that sometimes gets overlooked. So we have resources that we're able to connect folks if they're, at that stage where they're thinking about succession planning or retiring from their business.
Yeah. Well, and I know I was actually on last week because I'm working on updating my media kit, my press kit for Project More Happy, and I was searching and I found whole pieces, whole blog posts and articles on why it's important and how to actually do it on KCSourceLink. So there is like everything really you could think of that you might come across from a challenge or something you don't know as an entrepreneur here in the KC space. Tell me real quick before we jump to kind of the vision of what our future can be when we invest in this way, but why is it so important for Kansas City or the state or even, anyone to invest in people who are wanting to build and grow businesses?
Yeah, it's really exciting, and I'll share a little bit about some of the work that we'll be doing over the next few years that will kind of add to this. But really, one, entrepreneurship is a piece or is an activity that has an impact on economic development. So that is something that over the years we have supported, and we use this phrase entrepreneurial led economic development in the work that we're supporting, because there's a lot of numbers that show and research that we've even been able to do over the years that does show the impact that small businesses and entrepreneurs have in our local economy. So one, for instance, is our annual jobs report that we put out every year. And what we've seen is that over, the 5-year period that we look at normally, small businesses or startups, in this case with 20 or less employees, were responsible for 66% of the new jobs created or net new jobs created during that period. So it's not to say that, people should take this lens of anti-big business, because there is a really big need to have diversity in the types of businesses that we have here in Kansas City and across the nation. But it really is important to emphasize the impact that small businesses and entrepreneurs have in our communities. And another area why it's so important is that it has been proven and continues to be reported the impact that small business and entrepreneurship has on individuals and specific communities that are actually looking to build wealth. And I know Kauffman Foundation had reported before that entrepreneurship is one of the activities or the activity that allows so many people to build wealth, move out of poverty, do so many things that you probably wouldn't be able to do without the opportunity of starting your own business and growing it.
Right. Well, and, I think you've done a lot of work and still do a lot of work in the community building space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you're talking about economic development, yes, that's from the Kansas City level, but it's also from the neighborhood level, right? Like I think of these businesses in Kansas City that have gone into neighborhoods where there isn't a lot of business. And now all of a sudden, entire ecosystems are growing. I think of the Truce development right now, like there are ecosystems now growing because one or two businesses decided, I'm going to invest here. and it changes whole communities.
Yeah, definitely. And something that we had presented on last week, and one of the things that I've always really enjoyed about this space of entrepreneurship and small business is that it really is an activity that combines both community and economic development. So oftentimes I like to use the phrase community economic development because you really need both of them to work. In alignment with each other to really drive equity and some of the things that you're talking about. But there's a lot happening now and reports that are demonstrating the impact that small businesses have in revitalizing neighborhoods, right? And doing it in an equitable way, because that is something that's very important, is that equitable economic development. And that is done through community development, which in a lot of ways is done through small business development. So you can see areas like you mentioned off Troost, where we've seen investments from small businesses. Northeast KCK is another example where you have businesses that are there today that are anchors in their communities, and they also have, I guess you would say, another impact in that they actually address the health and safety of neighborhoods just by being there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to me that there are so many of these little pockets now all around Kansas City that, I grew up here. I left for a while, but I grew up in the area, and it is a completely different place than when I grew up here. There are so many lively, and it's a very neighborhood city for people who don't know Kansas City.
Mhm.
So there are so many of these little pockets and micro ecosystems now that are connected on this larger scale through, programs like what you guys offer, but also just through the community building for entrepreneurs here. And that leads me to my next question, which isn't really on here, but I think it's really important because Kansas City doesn't really get spoken about a lot and talked about a lot on
Mm-mm.
a national stage. Austin's probably the most similar in terms of size and growth right now. But what do you think it is that makes Kansas City such a unique place where this innovation and entrepreneurship and this ecosystem has done so well and thrived here?
I would say that in a lot of ways, and this is from what I've heard from people who either come to Kansas City or learn a little bit about what we're doing in respect to our entrepreneurial ecosystem. But it's the connectivity of the people and the organizations and the different groups that exist in the space. What I hear a lot from folks, from these Austins, from these bigger cities, places that you mentioned that sometimes get recognized more for some of the activity that they're doing, is that Kansas City is well connected. And I would say part of that, is thanks to the work that we've done over the years since being established in 2003, but very important to recognize the work of our resource partners, those organizations that are working directly with small businesses, and then the entrepreneurs themselves too. I would say that Kansas City is a place where, of course, competition is a thing. But if somebody was to ask for help, there's usually somebody that is going to follow up on that request and get them connected. And it's really exciting. And I think that is our strength. It is our strength because people from outside have said that, is that, you say, hey, I need this, or I'm looking for this. And again, somebody will pop up and they'll say, hey, I know somebody, or I can help with that.
Yeah. No, and that is my lived experience. It's what I think makes it so special here is that, like 2 weeks ago, I put a post out on a Facebook group that's a small business, female-based Facebook group. But I just said, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. I'd love to connect with other people. And I have had so many coffee meetings and coffee chats and quick phone calls with people I have never met before.
Mm-hmm.
And the energy is so good. And it's always both sides are going, how can I help you? How can I help you? The amount of meetings I have where the meeting ends with, what can I do for you?
Hmm.
is it's really special here because it is almost like the whole community is in it together. We all want each other's businesses
Hmm.
to succeed because it helps the whole city, right? And it helps all of our neighborhoods. And all right, so we're going to talk about the future. Like,
Hmm.
what is your vision for the future, whether that's Kansas City or, beyond, in terms of what kind of future can we design and build when we invest in this way in our communities?
Yeah, well, this is really an exciting time for our ecosystem in general, Kansas City region, because KCSourceLink, with several of our partners and hundreds of entrepreneurs and other folks, did just recently complete a strategic plan for our ecosystem. So some people may know that several years ago, back in 2010, there was this big push that was led by the Kansas City Chamber of Commerce to make Kansas City the most entrepreneurial city in America. And over the years, you have seen organizations pop up to really support folks that maybe have specific needs. But even today, there's still this challenge of not everybody feeling like they're a part of that initiative to be part to really make Kansas City the most entrepreneurial city. So it was really important for us to really look and see where we've gone and where we are today, and then really talk a lot to the entrepreneurs and those supporting them and other folks that may regularly, interact with small businesses to get a better understanding of what their desires were. So that strategic plan that we put together that also analyzed the ecosystem here in the Kansas City region really focused on 7 imperatives for us and our partners to really focus on. And that is around cultivating talent, funding entrepreneurship, building capacity of our support organizations, opening doors to entrepreneurship, celebrating Kansas City as a place for small business and entrepreneurship, of course, through the storytelling, which we're
Yeah,
doing today, right?
that's right. Yes, the
Tech
huge
trans,
piece. It is.
yeah, moving ideas from the research lab to the marketplace. So, looking at our universities and knowing that there's a lot of research and there's a lot of resources that come from the university. But, the question is, how do we really get this stuff to get out into the community to support the work that's happening? And then the last is really engaging stakeholders, specifically corporate stakeholders and other people that may not be fully engaged in small business and entrepreneurship daily, to help them better understand the role that they can play. But it really is exciting because that particular project was done through support from Missouri Technology Corporation, who funded that. And then we recently were awarded an implementation grant. So
Oh,
we
wow.
will, over the next couple of years, be able to actually move forward with some of the ideas that were presented in that particular plan. But for it to actually really be successful is for not just us, KCSourceLink, to be involved in doing this, but making sure that we are working closely with our partners, which we have, during this process, but making sure that, if we want to address all of these issues at one time, we know that not one organization or a small group of people can do it. So we have to have this collective approach. So collective impact is a theme that I really have been very much leaning in on over the last couple of years. But really taking this approach where everybody kind of has this shared goal, shared vision, and we all kind of have an understanding of the role that we can play to make it happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited for all this stuff that you guys are laying out. And I love that y'all just got a grant to like start making it happen. That's good.
Yeah.
So what does a flourishing entrepreneurial ecosystem look like and do for the community?
I would say probably kind of going back to this theme of making Kansas City the most entrepreneurial city. I think one, it really is making sure that we are empowering folks to feel like they're a part of this space, right? And that's always something that, from my experience over the years, again, not everybody feels like they're a part of the larger community, right? And that, I think, is a really important piece, because if you don't feel this sense of belonging, then you're not going to move forward or have that empowerment to really play the role that you can have in supporting the larger space or this larger mission, right, that we have. So I think really, it is building the sense of belonging for people. And I think in some ways we do that through the connections that we make, so people can feel like, hey, I am getting the support that I need. And I am connecting with other people in this space who are a bit like me, right? Whether it be in how we look or the things that we like or what we do. They're kind of getting this sense of feeling like they're part of the space. So I think that really is an important thing. Of course, funding is another area.
Yeah.
Education, not just for those that are seeking to start and grow businesses, but also those that are seeking to support businesses, providing that capacity and support to folks to be better, to have more skills, to have more knowledge of the things that are going on, trends and so forth. But then again, kind of going back to this earlier theme that I mentioned, is really kind of being more intentional and helping people understand the role that they can play. So, folks like me, and other people in our space, I'd say 100% or close to 100% of our work is for supporting small businesses, right? But there's other people in our region who may only, have 5% of their work be responsible for supporting small businesses. So being intentional and helping, everybody understand, whether it's 100% of your time or 5% or a 0.5% of your time, knowing what you can do to really help.
Yeah, that's awesome. And honestly, I know that Kansas City has been trying to grow in this space for a while now. I didn't know that our goal was to be the most entrepreneurial city, and I think that's amazing and should be like sung from the rooftops here and shared everywhere. Because that is a goal, and a mission and a vision that I think so many people can get behind. And when you say, "Oh, that's the vision," how can I use my gifts, or how can I become a part of making that a reality? And I guess that's our next step. Is like, what is our roadmap for making it a reality that Kansas City thrives and flourishes in this way in the ecosystem here?
Yeah, so it's funny that you mentioned that. So because there were some people who didn't like that, that goal of making Kansas City the most entrepreneurial city, because again, they didn't feel that we were doing that or feel that they were part of that. So through this process, we actually were able to get feedback from the community, both folks serving organizations, small businesses, and small businesses themselves. And our new, collective vision that we actually created is for Greater Kansas City to be a place where everyone is empowered to pursue their passion through entrepreneurship, advancing in innovative and prosperous communities. So it really is, again, kind of taking this note of everybody feeling empowered to pursue their passion through entrepreneurship. So that doesn't even mean that everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, start their own business. There's some people who just want to help them, right? And feel like they can be empowered to be part of that journey with folks. So I think it really is, again, starting with that really important piece, feeling like you belong, then feeling empowered, but then also having these steps or these notes or bullet points, I guess you would say, that say what you could do or what is possible, right? Because that is sometimes where we run into a challenge where we say, well, I have these skills, but I don't really know how to help out. So so that is something that we are looking to do through some of the work around this Power of Entrepreneurship initiative that we're working on, but really helping people understand, whether it be through sectors or groups, here is what this sector or this group of people can do to support small businesses and entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, that's something I talk with my clients about a lot. Is I think it's somewhat easier for us to go, this is what I want down the road, but it's harder for us to say, what tangible action can I actually take to get there, right? It's how do I actually insert myself in this mission and vision? So I love that y'all are thinking about that and how to support people in figuring out how they can contribute in this way. I think, you said it's about accessible to all, which I love. And I just want to echo what I have experienced in Kansas City in particular, because I've lived in Chicago, I've lived in Texas, I've lived in, I've spent time in Colorado. And what I think is so interesting about the Kansas City ecosystem, and I can even look at Global Entrepreneurship Week last year and just go, the diversity of people, ideas, businesses, backgrounds, like it really does feel inclusive because you can find your people there. Like we all have different people, right? And it really feels to me like it's not your cookie cutter ecosystem. It's not when I would go to like events in Houston, like I knew what kind of room I was going to walk into because it was a well-financed, moneyed, they all looked the same way kind of ecosystem. Now there are other pockets and within the city and within those different regions. But like when you walk into a networking event or a business startup event or entrepreneurial event in Kansas City, like to me, it looks different than what I've seen anywhere else. And the stories I hear and the kinds of businesses people are trying to launch, like they're not cookie cutter mainstream. Like it is a very diverse and inclusive ecosystem here, I would say.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. And I think, again, that is, the level of connectivity that we have with folks. And, what I've been hearing a lot more from folks is that it's not just people connecting based off of like the successes or the things that they have in common that they like, but sometimes it's in these shared challenges, right?
Yes.
And you are starting to hear entrepreneurs say more of, in this sense of, I want to know other people's challenges so that way we can work through them together, right? But I would add, even then, there are still groups or individuals that we're still not connecting with. And I think that, is going to be very important for us over the next few years in this particular project that we are working on to bring more community focused individuals into the space to help make those connections, help be in places where oftentimes we're maybe overlooking, making sure that we're in these places so then we can inform folks, more groups that we're missing out on about the entrepreneurial ecosystem and how to navigate it successfully. So that is really important. I always think back to a particular program that I supported a few years ago, and there was an individual who was taking the class, this program, which was providing small grants to individuals in certain parts of Kansas City where life expectancy was low. And the idea was that through funding support and through technical assistance, you could provide economic opportunity, financial stability, which would then reach, have an impact in other areas. But it always is something that I think is going to, always stick to me, where she had said that Kansas City cannot be the most entrepreneurial city until we reach the folks that are at the cusp of society, right? And help bring them into the space. So I think for us and for our communities, that's a really important piece to really focus on, because as diverse as we are, as inclusive as we are compared to other places, we're still missing a lot of people.
Yeah. So how do you reach those? How do you reach those people? I just went off script. I'm sorry. I just went off script.
No, it's good because I like the discussion. I think, one, it really is having these genuine relationships or partnerships with groups that are doing a really great job of connecting with individuals from specific communities. So I can just tell you, for instance, coming from a space or starting my career working primarily with immigrant entrepreneurs, Latino entrepreneurs, there's these spaces where people do feel comfortable, right? And it's because we have groups, we have partners, organizations, and individuals who have been the champions for those communities, right? And have built the trust. At the same time, it really is important, I believe, to make sure that those spaces are safe and secure, because so many of us need those spaces to be able to talk about the challenges that are unique to just us. But also making sure that we provide this safe space when folks want to step out into the larger ecosystem. So it is those partnerships, it is being genuine, and I think it is really being intentional in what the shared goals are, right, for different groups. But for me, I can just tell you from experience, trying to make sure that as a Latino, getting folks who are wanting to start and grow businesses from my community to not just be successful in their space, but to be successful in this larger space is so important. But again, the partnerships, not just with those that are working directly with entrepreneurs, but other folks, financial institutions, corporations, and other groups that, again, can play a role, is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what can our listeners do today or this week? What can they do? What action step can they take to help y'all be successful in Kansas City, be successful in this endeavor?
I think one, the obvious thing I would say is, one, just supporting small businesses, right? Shopping local. Of course, there's always going to be some things that we have to buy from larger businesses. But I could tell you, just, doing a scan through social media and talking to folks, 2024 really has been a struggle for a lot of businesses. And you are starting to see some well-established businesses shut down this year, or folks say that, hey, I'm at the verge of closing. And part of that is the economy, right? People aren't going out and spending as much. But I think, where you do have those opportunities to spend, making sure that we do that through those small businesses. So we do have a page for folks by KC that is a directory of local businesses, but there's also other directories that support local businesses. So I would say that being educated in the space. So we provide reports, as you mentioned. We have guides. We write blogs that highlight small businesses. So I think just even being educated on entrepreneurship is one thing, because I think for a lot of folks, it's just really having a better understanding of the space before they can actually understand how to support the space, right?
Yeah.
I think those are really two key areas for folks. And then, I always tell people that if they know anybody who's wanting to start and grow business, that they can reach out to us at KCSourceLink.com, or our phone number, which is 816-235-6000. 816-235-6500. There's a lot of numbers that I have to keep track of. But they can call, and there's somebody that's going to be able to support that person. So again, it really is just making sure that people are getting connected to the person or the organization that they need to help them start their business or grow their business. Or, there's people that even just reach out to say, how can I help? Right.
Yep.
And that's also important too.
Yeah. Well, and I know we've spoken a lot about the Kansas City ecosystem today, because that's the one we live and work and support right now. But all of these, both of those action steps, right? Buying local and connecting with ecosystems like this, and learning and educating yourself on in the entrepreneurial space, you can do that anywhere. Right? You just have to start being intentional about it. And as Michael said earlier, and I'm going to let him share the number again, but source links are all over now as well. I'm not sure they're all as robust as this one, but there are resources and communities all over that you can plug yourself into if you're not in, this wonderful city here with us.
Yeah. So again, folks can reach us at 816-235-6500. That's our hotline, or go to KCSourceLink.com. We have a My Plan page where they can put in the information that they're looking for, or the specific need that they have. We have a really cool tool that actually now spits out resources in real time. But if somebody does have a very specific need, then somebody in our team will reach out to them, with those resources. But as you mentioned, Jess, what's really exciting is that this, again, was built with this idea that you could model the work of KCSourceLink across the nation. And as I mentioned, we have our national team that is working in more than 80 communities across the nation. And what's really interesting about that, and I think something that will really actually be helpful in helping us understand, what is necessary in building strong entrepreneurial ecosystems, is really looking at the different groups that are leading these similar initiatives, right? So for us, KCSourceLink, we're a community-based organization, but we work under the university, right? So we're a university program, which actually helps us a bit because there's a specific designation that we actually have from the Economic Development Administration as a university center. So that allows us some funding and other resources to push this entrepreneurial-led economic development. And we're a regional group, right? But as you mentioned, we have our statewide program, Missouri SourceLink. Some of the groups that are leading similar programs across the state may be municipalities, nonprofits, and other groups. So it really is unique because not everybody is doing the work the same way. Now, it's based off of a very similar model, right? Connecting entrepreneurs to resources. But these initiatives are led by various groups across the nation. And what's great is that, as you look from place to place, the individuals and the groups that are responsible or could be responsible for building these strong ecosystems look different.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love how much y'all have grown. I love where you're headed. It's all very exciting. And I love knowing that these ecosystems, people are intentionally, and communities are intentionally trying to build these in other places, because it is super important. As you keep saying, the entrepreneurship-led economic development, like, it has high impact if we are intentional about investing in those spaces and communities.
Oh, definitely. And I would say, right now I'm working on a project where I'm reading a lot on what is actually being written about entrepreneurship and the impact it has on economic development and community development and other spaces. But one of the challenges that I am seeing, or at least that is being stated, is that there's still not enough being written about entrepreneurship and the impact that it has, right? It's also this understanding of what entrepreneurship is, right? Because because people have their own definitions of it, and that does impact then the story that we tell. But really, having more stories about entrepreneurs, people, and not just highlighting their successes, but some of the challenges that they've gone through is necessary. But then also being able to identify those impacts. So I'm really excited, and we're really excited that we'll also be looking at key indicators or different metrics that could be tracked from different communities or groups to say, hey, this is actually the impact that entrepreneurs and small businesses have on this specific thing, right? So as we talked about earlier, neighborhood revitalization, we know that as businesses pop up, it looks good in the community, right, but what is that measurable impact that is having? And that's what I'm really excited for at least our region to really look further into.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the best part about that is when we have that research and those numbers, then that's more, it gives more to people who want to invest in it. It says, here's
Mhm.
why you should invest in these ecosystems. So it really is understanding the story and the impact, and getting those numbers and really being able to track and measure it, can be even more game changing than already having, an ecosystem and community here. So that's awesome.
Yeah. No, it's cool that you mentioned that, because one of the things that we're really going to be focusing on too is that through that storytelling, through that data, and also through helping support our resource partners or
Mhm.
entrepreneur support organizations, as people will refer to them, building that capacity through skills and through funding, is that we do want to really focus on helping foundations and other groups understand that impact, right?
Yeah.
Because you are starting to see in the philanthropic space this push for wealth building initiatives, but oftentimes entrepreneurship gets left out
Yeah.
of that work, right? Or getting that support. So again, collectively working as a region to help tell that story, to measure that impact, so that way folks can say, hey, you know what, um, we can actually support this. That's what would be really nice to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. All right, we are going to, I know this has been a long conversation, but this is like, I love this stuff. This has been such a fruitful conversation, a lot of good information here. Michael, is there anything, you want to add before we tell our listeners goodbye?
I think this goes back to something we just talked about earlier, but something that's been on my mind a lot is really around being able to support the ecosystem or support each other, right?
Mhm.
And this is something that I would say even my mom actually taught me, is that a lot of times we ask each other, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? And sometimes that doesn't actually turn into anything, because the person receiving that question maybe is overwhelmed or doesn't really know what they need, and nothing happens. So, what I had presented recently, and something that's been on my mind a lot, is being able to change that question to share with people, here's what I could do to help, right?
Mhm.
So when we
Yeah.
understand our skill sets, when we have a better understanding of what the needs are, the challenges are, then we can just say, hey, here's what I can do to help. And that can actually save a lot of time and maybe get more work done. But that just is probably the thing that's been on my mind a lot lately, and that I just wanted to share before taking off.
I love it because I spend a lot of time in the power of language and how we frame conversations. And so I think, I mean, I'm sitting here, I wrote it down because I'm going to make a note of it and, probably use it as promotion for this episode, even because it is it's a way of you stepping into your story and your gift and your light and supporting, an ecosystem and supporting something that's really important at the same time. And it takes the burden off of the other person to figure it out.
Mhm.
It becomes something you can own and show up authentically as you and present a gift to another
Yes.
person.
Yeah.
So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you so much for your time today and the work you, and your team are doing here in Kansas City. We are so grateful to have y'all in the community. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm really happy to be here with the team. We have a great team, and like I mentioned, it's not just the handful of people that are here at KCSourceLink and the UMKC Innovation Center, but also the hundreds of people that we work with. Because it really is, a community of people that make this happen.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. Well, thank you so much, Michael. And thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Jess.